Okay, I think we'll make a start. So welcome back everybody to our immunity community. We were thrilled and just so overwhelmed by how many people came last time and how many people have watched it since and all the lovely feedback that we've had. So we'll jump straight in today, and you all know Julia, and here she is again. Have a lovely time.
Thanks. Hi everyone, good to see you. So this is all about diet this week. So it's the second out of 3. And there's so much information out there about diet and what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat, and we get the question every day of our working lives being, what should I eat for this condition, what should I eat for that? And the honest truth is that it's different for everybody, and we've got to find those individual quirks, and we've got to find what suits you and what doesn't suit you. You know, for example, some people just get on amazingly well with a vegan diet and all their health problems just melt away and they're absolutely fine, whereas other people do that for a month and get really sick because their bodies are more designed to get proteins from meat. So there's just so many different individualities with it. So what we're not going to do today is say, like, if you eat this list of foods your immune system will be stronger, because it's not quite as simple as that. So, you know, it took quite a lot more thought than I imagined, really, in like what is the best advice for like how to eat yourself well or eat yourself better. And you know, I think we've just kind of hoped to teach you some principles today that then you can incorporate into whatever your diet is. So if you really like to eat meat and you think, oh, they're going to say you've got to stop eating meat, no, we're not going to do that at all. But the principles that we teach you should be able to be incorporated into any style of diet, whether it's vegan, vegetarian, meat eating, pescatarian, flexitarian, keto, like whatever you like. There's a lot of different ways of incorporating it. So you know all of us now, so we don't need to worry about that. So sort of pick up where we left off last time. So we identified that there's kind of 4 key areas of how to build up your immunity and how to get a stronger, more robust immune system, particularly focus on the innate side of the immune system, which is those barriers that we talked about. So we've got the eating aspect, which we'll talk about today, sleeping, breathing, and moving. So I'll be really interested to see who's incorporated some breath work into their lifestyle this week. So, you know, one of the things that's probably worth mentioning is our intention is that we give you this information that then you go and try and run with it and try and fit it into your lifestyle straight away, because we know with full confidence that if you're breathing better, your immunity is better. So it's one thing like listening to the webinars and getting the knowledge, and then sometimes it's getting that hurdle of how do you then implement it into your own routine. So hopefully, you know, some of you have been doing breath work in the last week since we last met, but if you haven't, please start today, because, you know, even within a week, you can make changes in the oxygen levels in your body, the tissue oxygenation, you alkalize your system, and then your immune system is much stronger. So, you know, please do the breathing work. Sleeping, is, you know, as we described, it's a lot more complex, and we'll definitely cover it next week when we come to talking about nutritional supplements and like sort of cheats and tricks that you can do to help your sleep. And movement, hopefully again this week you've all been moving a little bit more each day than you were the day before, and just trying to challenge yourself to just keep improving on the movement level. Okay, so focusing today then on eating, and what is that all about? So let me just remind you of this picture from last week. So this is representing your immune system. This is the outside area here, or if you're eating, this is the inside of your intestinal tract, like the food, where the food is all passing through. And you have the barrier here, which is your innate immune system, and then the interior of your body here, where you've got your adaptive immune system at work. So if you remember, like any kind of potential like food fragments, infections, all of that is in this compartment here. and it's dependent on a really strong barrier as to whether that actually penetrates the body and causes a response or not. So you hopefully remember this from last week, that this is what we're aiming for, is a really strong innate immune system, and that will help protect you not only from COVID, but all manner of infections as well, and just have a healthier relationship with your ecosystem around you. So in week 1, we learned that the innate immune system is based on mucous membrane. So the mucous membrane being the kind of wet lining that's in all your body cavities, this is absolutely a key element to your innate immune system. So today, we're going to focus on the gut, because obviously that's the interface with your diet. So no matter what you're eating, it's going to be going through your gut and those passages. So for those of you that don't know what this is a lovely picture of the small intestine here, and then the colon that goes around the outside of it. So this is our focus this week, of like getting the barrier strong in this particular area, and how do we influence it by the nutrients that we eat in our diet. So to remind you then, the barrier itself has got 3 components to it. So we think of your gut lining in your intestines, in your stomach, in your mouth, the whole lot of it is all got these kind of this barrier. So it starts with a layer of cells, and these cells then have another layer on top of them that's like a really viscous fluid called mucus, and then on top of the mucus and within it lives bacterial colonies of lots of different types. So that is the structure inherently of what we're trying to optimize. So you need to look at all of the 3 key areas. So if your cells aren't strong enough, or they're structurally not good enough, then they're not going to be A, making mucus very well, or also B, supporting it. So in that mucus layer, you've got most of the cells are cells that are sort of there to structurally support, but then dotted in at intervals are cells that actually make mucus. So if your cell is not in good working order, the cells that make mucus won't make as much, and the cells that are there for structural support won't have that integrity. So it's almost like the foundation of that barrier is not going to be there strongly enough, and then everything else subsequent on top of that, so the mucus and the bacteria, will also suffer. So getting the cells in good health is really, really important. And we're going to talk this week about then, well, what are your cells about, and how do you use your diet to actually optimize the function of your cells. And then second layer, being the mucus, and how do we optimize that with our foods in our diet, and a little mention of what we shouldn't do as well that actually disrupts the mucus. And then the bacteria, so we touched on this briefly last week. It's an enormous subject in its own right. The bacteria that lives in our gut, on our skin, in our mouth, in our eyes, in our ears, everywhere around us as well, is just huge microbial communities. And what we're aiming for with the bacterial communities is diversity. As many different types as possible is what will make a stronger innate immune system. Okay, so first, how we're going to progress through this is we're going to first look at what we can do to support our cells, then what we can do to support our mucus, then what we can do to support our bacteria, and that's the structure of how we're going to go through it. Okay, so we start off with cells. So this is a typical picture of what your cell looks like that is lining your digestive tract. So it's kind of funny egg-shaped thing here is the nucleus that contains all your DNA, which is your genetic material that tells the cell everything. Every job your cell needs to do, your DNA needs to tell it how to do it. And this top bit here is really interesting because you can see it's got these little kind of hair-like structures on it. So that side of it, if you imagine, that's facing inwards to the intestinal passages. So if you imagine like all your food and drinks, everything you consume is passing by this surface here. Imagine the mucus on top of it as well, and the bacteria. So these little kind of hair-like structures are actually extensions of the cell that have an enormous surface area to absorb as much nutrition out of your diet as possible. So the structure of the cell is really, really crucial here, because if your cell is not structurally adequate, then you can start to lose some of these extensions of the cell, and that's actually what picks up all of the nutrition. If it was just completely flat, it wouldn't be able to pick up enough nutrition to keep you healthy. So the structural integrity of the cell is really, really crucial. And you can see they're lined up really close together. So there's 6 cells here. This is obviously diagrammatic form. There's, you know, millions of these lining the intestine. But you'll notice there isn't a gap between them either. So some of you might have heard of the condition called leaky gut, when actually we get some inflammation at this area where food contents and bacteria and everything can actually seep through the cracks here. So this one has got good integrity. This is a really good base for making mucus, for absorbing nutrients, and for having lovely bacterial colony on top of it. So let's have a little think about what foods are really useful. So to support the cell membrane is all about fat. So fat, some of you might be thinking, but isn't fat bad for you? There's, you know, the fat gets bad press, it gets a bad name, but there's a difference between certain types of fats and other fats. Some fats can be extremely healthy for you, but your body is constantly renewing, so you need the nutrients from your diet in order to absorb into your body so that you can actually make new cells. They're particularly at the intestinal tract, it's such a fast turnover of those cells. You need to be constantly making new ones. So if you simply don't have enough fat in your diet, you can't do that, and your cell function throughout your whole body, even into your brain and your nervous system, it's all so inherently dependent on fat that if you don't have it in your diet, your immune system will suffer, but your general health also will suffer. So fats are so important. So this is not by no means a prescriptive list, but just to give you an idea of the healthy fats that we're on about. Avocado is one of the world's best foods. It's got vitamin E, it's got all sorts of essential fatty acids in there. It's really, really helpful. Nuts and seeds, fish, particularly oily fish like salmon. We always would recommend wild salmon so that it hasn't got some of the toxins associated with farmed. Herring, sardines, mackerel, those kind of more oily fish are particularly beneficial for your cells. Olives, a treat for some, but actually really, really healthy for you. And of course, olive oil is really useful, coconut oil. So in terms of cooking your foods, how you prepare your foods is often quite as important as what they are. So cooking, I would suggest that you use only extra virgin olive oil, because you can heat that to quite a high temperature and it keeps nice and stable, or coconut oil, and no other oils or fats at all. So vegetable oil, actually, it's got some damaging components in it that when it's heated, it can interfere with your cell membrane structure. So we don't recommend cooking in vegetable oil at all. And choline is something that comes from eggs. So eggs are like nature's whole food, aren't they? I think eggs are fantastic. It's so easy, they're tasty, and they provide the right sort of fat. So there's some saturated fat in eggs. And I think this is why they got a really bad name in earlier decades of like, eggs are bad, eggs cause heart disease, eggs cause high cholesterol. We know all that now. It's been completely demystified, and we know that that's not a problem. So eggs are really, really healthy, and it's not particularly relevant for today, but eggs are amazing for cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia, that sort of thing. They're really, really protective against that, because the brain is made of fat. The cells in the body are made of fat. So withdrawing the fat is actually not that helpful. Of course, you can overdo it, and it's like everything, you've got to get the right kind of balance. But for the cell membrane, fat is the most important nutrient that you can get. So as well as supporting the cell membrane, and that's the more structural aspects, we want to protect the cell and protect it from any kind of damage that might occur, and also keep providing nutrients to it so then it can metabolize, it can produce energy, and it can do its job. So if its job is to make mucus, for some cells in the intestinal lining, their only job is to make mucus. That is their life. That is what they do. They just make mucus. So other jobs, you know, if you've got a cell in the liver, it has to detoxify something. They all have slightly different jobs, but the cell structure is inherently the same. So how do we protect that from becoming damaged? So antioxidants in our diet are really, really crucial for this. And if you just think colourful fruits and veg, you've got it with antioxidants. So we're going to just try and simplify these concepts for you today, because there's no point saying like you absolutely must have goji berry that's grown in South America. You know, there's so many foods that are local to us that you can grow in your garden that provide all of the things you could ever possibly need. So, you know, just to be aware of everything that you're reading and hearing about is sometimes, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. So don't worry about it. So feeding the cell and giving it nourishment, again, fruits and vegetables will provide something called phytonutrients. So the word phyto, this means plant. So the nutrients that come from plants. So it's like 10,000 phytonutrients out there, and I'm not going to name them all today, but these are crucial for providing different nutrients for the cell to become healthy and to protect the cell from any kind of stress that it might have undergone, and also protect that nucleus and protect the DNA as well. So we know from, you know, studies on cancer and what goes wrong with cancer is DNA that gets mutated, and due to the environment in the cell. So we need the environment in the cell to protect the DNA, to stop any of those sort of aberrant mutations that go on. So the phytonutrients are really crucial to this process. Inositol is a nutrient that you get in grains, so particularly whole grain or wild rice is a really, really nice source of inositol, and that will help the cell membrane and the cell contents as well. And last but not least, water. So, you know, I don't want to go back to absolute basics, because I'm sure you all know that being hydrated is good enough, but it's just worthwhile having that memory, or not that memory, that reminder of needing to drink, because you need to hydrate your body, hydrate your cells, hydrate your tissues. And if they're not hydrated, the water in your body is the medium in which it carries nutrients into the cell, it carries toxins out of the cell and then away again. So if you have a dehydrated body, it does more than just make you feel thirsty. That's when you feel thirsty, that's your body telling you, I can't function on this level of water and you need more. So ideally you shouldn't really be getting thirsty, you should just be having water or fluids at regular intervals throughout the day. Okay, right. So where are we now? So mucus. So this is then the second layer of the barrier that we're talking about today. So how do we use our diets to get the mucus layer in really good condition? So split this up into two sections: how to repair it and how to maintain it. Because if it's damaged, you first need to repair it using anti-inflammatories. You need to kind of cool the fire down before you can start nourishing it. A lot of people have got an inflamed mucous membrane. If you're getting any kind of irritable bowel syndrome, then your mucus barrier might need a bit of work. If you drink a lot of alcohol, or have a lot of things like Coke or fizzy drinks or processed foods in your diet, it's quite likely that your mucus barrier is more inflamed than it should be, meaning it can't have that protective role as much as it should do. So first we need to lower the inflammation at the mucous membrane level, but then nourish it and maintain it. So one of the things that, again, I apologise if you're vegan, because it's something that you just can't get from a vegan source, but bone broth is really, really useful. So there's two nutrients, gelatin and collagen. These are very, very nourishing for the mucus barrier. They help reduce inflammation at that level, and they help provide the amino acids there to just get the mucus produced, to give it a nice coating on the cells, so that you've got that distinct protective layer of your mucus. So there's lots of ways in which you can, there's loads of recipes online that you can get for bone broth, but quite simply, I mean, I do it on a weekly basis and just get a chicken in the slow cooker, and then when the chicken is cooked, take the meat off and then put that to one side, and then put all the the bones, the giblets back in again, and a couple of lugs of cider vinegar, because the acidity of the cider vinegar actually draws out the minerals from the bones and helps it to just get as much possible out into the broth, And then I leave my slow cooker on overnight for at least 12 hours, sometimes 24. Depends when I can figure out when to empty it. Sometimes I accidentally leave it for a little bit longer, but it's fine up to 24 hours in a slow cooker. And then you just drain it through a sieve, put it in the fridge, and then scrape the fat off the top. So that sort of fat, that kind of animal fat, is not really the sort of fat that I would include. That is the fat that I would choose to discard. But then you've got that lovely jelly-like substance, and then you can do what you like with it. Some people drink it. I make soup with it, and then I can make sure everyone in the family is getting a little bit of brain broth. But you can do what you like with it. So there's much more complex recipes online using bay leaves and chopping celery and carrots and various things. But I just wanted to show you my way, because sometimes you're just too busy to think about all the different recipes for everything. So there are dead easy ways to make bone broth, but do remember a bit of acidity helps. So whether that's a splash of apple cider vinegar or some lemon juice will do it, or just chopping up a lemon and just putting that in the slow cooker as well. And if you haven't got a slow cooker, they're like £15 from Argos, really, really cheap. So hopefully accessible for most. So anti-inflammatories then in your diet, turmeric and ginger, particularly, are things that you can add to your food. So powdered ginger or powdered turmeric is really readily available, or just get the roots. And you can grate the roots of ginger and turmeric. If you're grating turmeric, every time I grate, I do like using the fresh roots, and just be careful because it gives you smoker's fingers. They go a little bit yellow on the tips of your fingers. Sometimes as a nutritional therapist, you get caught out the next day on a consultation. You think, oh, I don't smoke, actually it was just turmeric. So you might want to wear gloves if you're using the actual root, or just chuck a half teaspoon of turmeric in wherever you're cooking. And those spices are particularly good for reducing inflammation, and especially inflammation in the gut itself. Aloe vera is something that you can just buy as a drink and have a tablespoon or two a day, and it's really anti-inflammatory, and it's got something, it's considered a mucilage food, and mucilage foods are ones that actually give that kind of mucus layer back to your gut. So if it's been really inflamed, it helps to sort of coat those cells again and really protect it. And aloe vera is like a cooling thing. It just cools down inflammation, lets the mucous membrane rest a little bit, and it just can be really nice. And particularly if you're feeling any kind of burning sensations anywhere throughout your gut, it might be really nice to try some aloe vera. Okay, so that's more kind of about how to repair it when it's been battered a little by your diet. So how do we maintain it? So vitamin D, vitamin A and zinc are the top 3 nutrients that we use all of the time in either dietary or supplement form to help somebody that's got a mucus barrier integrity that's broken. So it's, as well as repairing it, it's useful to just maintain the health of it. So these nutrients will all help maintain the effectiveness of how thick that mucus barrier is. So vitamin D comes from the sunshine or from supplements. So vitamin D as a supplement, I'll tell you now, is worthwhile through the winter months when you live in the UK. It's a no-brainer. And some GPs have even stopped testing it, just take it anyway. You can go up to quite a high level before you cause a problem. We'll go into vitamin D and just things to watch out for next week. But I just, it's an easy thing to recommend for most people, that particularly at this time of year, your vitamin D is probably the lowest it has been because we've just been through the winter. So it comes from the sunshine. If you're not out in the sunshine exposing your skin without sun cream on, then making vitamin D is quite impaired. So during the winter months, when you get to this time of year, this is all, unless you've been taking supplements through the winter, this is the time when it gets particularly low. So if you're worried about it, it might be worthwhile getting your vitamin D tested at this time of year, or just take some vitamin D. Vitamin A comes from eggs. Again, eggs are an amazing nutrient. Liver, sweet potato and vegetables that are in the orange and yellow colour will produce some forms of vitamin A as well. So there's some things that might be worthwhile including in your diet. Zinc is actually a really common deficiency in the Western world. So zinc isn't really in our soils in abundance as it used to be. And a lot of people are quite low in zinc. So seafood is a really rich source of zinc, and also pumpkin seeds. Zinc is such a healing thing. You can know you're low in zinc if you get a cut or a bruise or something. It just takes ages to heal. If you feel like your healing time is quite slow, that's often down to zinc deficiency. So that's some tangible way that you might know that you're deficient in zinc. Okay, and fiber as well. Fiber is a key nutrient. It's an absolute superstar nutrient for many, many things with your gut function, with your digestive function, and your diet as well. But in terms of the innate immune system, fiber is absolutely key to maintaining the mucus barrier, as well as the bacteria as well. So you get fiber from fruits, vegetables, and grains. And we don't eat enough fiber. We don't eat enough fiber. Typical Western diet, we probably have about, at best, a third of the amount of fiber that we should do for our health of our digestive system. So that's really something to focus on. Okay, so just to recap where we are, if you remember the slide at the beginning where the structure of the innate immune system membranes that are lining the gut are made of your cells, your mucus layer, and then your bacteria that lives in the mucus. So we've discussed how to maintain your cells and keep them healthy, how to maintain your mucus and keep that healthy. And now we're looking at how to maintain good, diverse bacterial colonies. So there's two ways of doing it. You can eat bacteria, you can actually consume bacteria. So you've probably mostly heard of probiotics. So you get probiotics, meaning live bacteria, in unpasteurized fermented foods. So apple cider vinegar, if you know us at Margaret Hills and at the clinic, you know that we love cider vinegar. We really, really recommend it for just optimal health. It's good for your digestion, good for alkalizing your body, amazing for your joints, and just it's like elixir of youth. We do love cider vinegar. So, but in terms of bacteria, it contains probiotics. So really, really useful to consume that. We always recommend it diluted, a couple of teaspoons in about 150 ml of water. Sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, yogurt, these are all foods that contain bacteria. So sauerkraut is definitely making a comeback. Things like kimchi, they are kimchi is a Korean food. Sauerkraut originates from Germany, but it's like fermented cabbage and garlic and onions. When you ferment those vegetables over a period of time, they have their own ecosystem of bacteria, so that then when you consume that product, it then contributes to your ecosystem within your gut as well. So that's something really worthwhile considering. And a lot of Western diets, including a lot of processed foods, it's dead food. Like the nutrients have been pummeled away by all of the processing, that there's just, yes, you've got your carbohydrates in there, you might have your protein in there, you might have your fats in there, but all the kind of micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, and certainly the bacteria that would naturally occur on the surface of the vegetables has been blitzed away. So trying to bring in living foods back into our diet absolutely boosts significantly your innate immune system. Miso, so some of you might use that regularly, some of you might not have heard of that, but miso is like, I use it as like a stock. You can just add a teaspoon or a tablespoon into whatever you're cooking, and it gives it a nice seasoning. So perfect for soups, curries, casseroles, whatever you like really, but you can just use it liberally instead of like your what they call like the Knorr stock cube stuff with flavorings and things. Put miso instead of that, and then you're getting your fermented food and you're getting your seasoning, and it's a very easy way. I love easy ways of getting benefits rather than having to work really hard for it. And a jar of miso can just be left in your fridge and you can just use a teaspoon whenever you think of it. Okay. So second way of looking at your gut bacteria is to actually make more of it yourself. So you've got, you know, in your gut, you've got trillions and trillions of bacterial types in there. So we need to nourish those. So we don't want a dead diet. We want to have living foods in our diet, but we also want to nourish the colonies that are already in our gut. So to make more bacteria yourself, you need something called prebiotics. So very similar to probiotics, but pre means the food for the bacteria, whereas probiotics is the bacteria itself. So prebiotic foods, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, which are delicious, by the way. Jerusalem artichokes, I roasted them this week with other root vegetables and just loads of garlic and a lovely sauce, and they were absolutely delicious. My favorite thing is Jerusalem artichoke, particularly good with garlic. Garlic, onions, leeks, cabbage, chickpeas, lentils, kidney beans. So a lot of the pulses are really, really useful as prebiotics. Bananas, oats, almonds, pistachio nuts, flax seeds, asparagus. So these are all very, very strong prebiotic foods. There's a range in there that, I love an artichoke. Some of you might not be eating artichokes, that's fine, but you might have a banana, or you might have some flaxseed that you can sprinkle on your porridge. There's lots of different options. And ideally, if you can mix it up a little bit and try and get a bit of diversity into your diet, diversity in your diet gives you diversity of gut bacteria. So the more variety you eat, the more variety of gut bacteria you'll get. So also phytonutrients, so those plant nutrients, phyto being plant, come from the colourful fruit and veg, and fibre is, as I said before, incredible as an absolute key nutrient for feeding the bacteria. So bacteria will feed off fibre. When they eat the fibre, so fibre is something that you don't digest yourself, but the bacteria will eat the fibre and then from that produce all kinds of beneficial compounds and chemicals that then get absorbed into your body and help run it, help tell your immune system what to do, and help, your blood sugar regulation and things like that. But the bacteria need the food to be able to work for you like that. So it's this kind of bi-directional relationship we have with our bacteria. They have a beautiful house in our guts, but then they also work really hard to provide the chemicals we need for healthy living. Okay, so that then completes that particular section of the three aspects of your innate immune system barrier. So the foods that help with your cells, with your mucus, and with your bacteria. So I'm well aware that some of you might have quickly scribbled down, I should be eating more garlic, onions, Jerusalem artichokes, bananas, all that. But actually, that's not really my intention. That's more to give you a guide of where those things come from. Thinking, how do you actually implement it and how do you actually do it? So there's a couple of key principles that are just really, really important, that kind of if you like forget all else, just use these principles. So having a colourful plate that looks attractive is almost the kind of the world's best thing you can do with your diet. So remember what I said earlier, I'm not going to say you should eat meat, shouldn't eat meat, all that kind of different stuff. There's different interpretations of it, but whatever you do, if you have a colourful plate that varies from meal to meal, you will be getting lots of those phytonutrients. And there's so many of them. Each different type feeds a very different type of colony of bacteria in your gut. So phytonutrients support the cells themselves, they protect your DNA, they help with the cell structure, they help you make mucus, and they help feed the bacteria as well. So colour is just incredible. So one of the things that I'd really like you to do is just go through these colour lists of orange and yellow, red, white and brown, green, and blues and purples, and just see if there's anything there that you can pick out that you don't really have in your diet. And if there's a colour group that you don't have, try and find something this week that can start to build up that colour group. But diversity is everything. I just want to put a note on the white or brown section here, because the problem with most Western diets is they are white or brown. We call it beige foods, like beige food is really bad for you. So these are the healthy white and brown foods that you can get. But what I don't mean is like, okay, good, you've got an entire bowl of pasta, you've covered white for the day. You haven't really covered white for the day. It's more like the sort of vegetables that that are healthier. But diversity is everything. And if you are eating meat, meat shouldn't be the main event, it should be the side dish. So even if you are having meat, you still should have lots of colour around it, lots of vegetables around it, and a lot of fibre as well. Okay, so fibre. Fibre is one of those things, you must all have heard of fibre. It's an indigestible carbohydrate. So it's a type of carbohydrate that you eat, but the nutrients, the carbohydrate from it doesn't get absorbed into the body because you can't break down that particular chemical structure. So the purpose of fibre is to have effects on the gut itself, inside the gut, not inside the body. So it does, if you eat more fibre, it helps with things like diabetes because it actually helps as a binder. So it can bind other sugars and slow down the release into your bloodstream so that you don't get big blood sugar peaks and troughs that can cause problems with insulin resistance and then diabetes. So fibre is helpful systemically for lots of different reasons. It feeds your healthy bacteria and helps maintain the mucus, and because it's a binder, it helps to bind toxins that then protect the cells. So if you can bind the toxins that are in your body in your gut, there a lot of things go through from your body through your liver to your gut to then be eliminated. If you haven't got enough fibre, quite often you can't bind them, then they get reabsorbed into your body again. So it's really, really important to get fibre in your gut so that you can bind those toxins that your body's trying to clear, and then you eliminate them through the bowel. So a really nice visualization for a particular type of fibre is like a broom, like it sweeps out your intestinal tract. So particularly if you have constipation or you feel really sluggish in your bowel, if you have a mental visualization of being swept out with a broom and getting all of those nooks and crannies, I mean, you've got 7 meters of intestinal tract all wrapped up in your stomach. So you need to, push through and clean it out, and fibre is the nutrient that does exactly that. So like I said, we're eating probably about, at best, a third of the amount of fibre that we need to in a typical Western diet. So probably that's something that we could all focus on and have a little bit more. But if you are eating more fibre, you'll need more water to go with it. So just bear that in mind. So you can have fibre supplements that you can buy as well, but I would really advocate work on your diet, get loads of veg in there, loads more veg, and cover your plate with at least 3 parts vegetable to then 1 part protein. Okay, so fibre and colours are the 2 key things that if you forget everything else, those things are key to your immune system: enough fibre and a colourful plate. But I wanted to mention that what you eat is very important, but when you eat is just as equally important. And when you're actually trying to heal, if you're trying to heal your immune system and you're coming from a place where you feel that your immunity is weak, this is going to be a really, really useful strategy for you to do. So eating at the right time to support your immune system. I'm going to introduce something called intermittent fasting, which is a style of eating, which is, you hear the word fasting, don't go into a blind panic. I'm going to tell you a way of doing it that's actually really, really easy. But fasting stimulates the body's cleaning process. So you need to give your body rest, and you need to give your gut rest so that it can do all the housekeeping jobs. So worn out parts of your cells begin to get recycled during a fasting phase because they can rest and sort themselves out rather than have to deal with a constant barrage of foods and drinks coming into the gut. So eating little and often was thought years and years ago, well, that's probably quite a sensible thing because you're not giving your gut too much to deal with at once. But actually what we know now is that eating little and often is not very healthy for your gut at all, because you've constantly got to secrete stomach acid, digestive enzymes. You've got to kind of keep that constant movement going through your gut. You can just rest it for a significant portion of time on a regular basis, then you get all of those housekeeping jobs done. So it's not as hard as it sounds. Our best recommendation for how to do it is what's called a 16-8 fast. So eat all of your day's calories within an 8-hour window. And fast for 16. So a suggestion is that you keep your eating phase between 9 and 5, just because it's easy to think, you know, that's a work day, 9 and 5. So you'd have your breakfast at 9 a.m. and your dinner at 4:30, and then you don't eat anything until then 9 a.m. the next day. A popular alternative way of doing it is just people to eat at, say, 7 at night and then miss breakfast and then have their first meal at, say, 11 a.m. So that is a really useful way of doing it, and it's been studied extensively, and it's really, really powerful to help boost your immune system. So I've just listed a non-surprising list of things that are bad for your immune system. So too much sugar, too much processed food, bad oils, which we've touched on, and things that turn to trans fats, so margarines and things like that are no good for you. Just use good old-fashioned butter. Really salty foods, additives and colorings that are in a lot of processed foods, or excessive red meat are all bad for pretty much everybody. And then just lastly, to finish, so as you're getting to know us, you know that we like really simple concepts that are just really easy to implement. And this one is a quote by somebody called Michael Pollan. He's a food writer, and I adore this quote because it just fits every single circumstance. So eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So eat food, meaning just eat real food, actual food that's grown out of the ground, or, you know, come in a traditional way, not something that's been made in a factory. So that's the eat food bit. Not too much. We don't want to have an enormous amount of calories. We eat way too many calories in the Western world, and mostly plants. That doesn't mean you have to be vegan, but like I said, it means that meat is the side dish, not the main event. So if you have meat, it's not necessarily a problem. It might be really healthy for you to have meat, but you must make sure that most of your plate is plant-based food, and that's the best way to get nourishment for your entire immune system, but also your whole body health as well. So thank you very much. Hope that made sense, and we invite questions from you all if you want to put those in the chat box, and we will answer those in session 4.
Thanks, Julia. That was brilliant. And just to add on what you said at the very end, there's a film, I think it's on Netflix, called In Defense of Food, which is Michael Pollan's film about food and about the food industry and about how it's become incredibly complicated and confusing over the last few years. So I definitely recommend watching that if you've got some time this weekend. So some of you might have some questions or would like a bit of help putting some of these concepts into place, either in relation to your immune system or kind of working out how to structure different eating habits into your life at the moment. So get in touch. You can book in with us for a consultation, and that applies to everything that we cover during these sessions. So yes, immunity, but also sleep and nutrition and food, and also stress. If you'd like to kind of cover one of those smaller sections in more detail with us, then please do get in touch. And otherwise, as Julia said, we'll be answering your questions not next week, the week after. So please put them in the chat or email them over to us, and we'll begin to collect those and talk about common things that come up. And otherwise, keep in touch and have a lovely weekend, and I hope you enjoyed today.